Welcome to CBR. The Punisher is an unstoppable vigilante with no superpowers. But did you know he actually acquired demonic superpowers soon before disappearing? Today, we are deep diving into Frank Castle's origins in both Marvel Comics and the MCU. Francis Castiglione, or Frank Castle, is a veteran who served in multiple tours, born in New York to a couple of Italian immigrants. Long before he became known as the Punisher, Frank was a U.S. Marines captain happily married to Maria. They had 2 children, Lisa and Frank Jr. The character first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 129, published in October 1973. The story takes place sometime after Frank becomes the Punisher. He mistakes Spider-Man for a criminal at first, but they soon turn into allies. Similar to many other Marvel characters who also have decades of history, the Punisher's exact origins have been retconned a few times. For most of his publication history, Frank was depicted as a Vietnam War veteran. However, in Punisher Volume 9, Number 4, that was changed to the Gulf War and the War on Terror. Marvel then released History of the Marvel Universe Volume 2 in 2019, which retconned Frank's military background again and made him fight the fictional Sian Kong War. During a period running a military recruitment office, Frank first met David Linus Lieberman, who would later become Microchip in Punisher Origin Microchip number 1, 1993. We'll get into his counterpart in the Punisher series later in the video, but in the comics, Microchip was a friend to the Punisher for years, who later turned into an enemy. But for now, let's focus on how the Punisher was born. What kicked off Frank's transformation into a vigilante in the comics in the tragic death of his family. Suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder since returning from his last tour, Frank grew distant from his family. As if they didn't have enough problems, the family coincidentally witnesses a mob killing in Central Park in Punisher Year 1 Volume 1, Number 1, 1994. The mobsters murdered the entire Castle family to ensure there would be no witnesses, but Frank survived. He sought justice though, legal means at first, but soon found out the Mafia had ties with the New York City Police Department, who closed the case. That's when Frank decided to use all of his combat and tactical planning skills to avenge his family by killing the people responsible. To honor their memory and find new purpose, he became the Punisher, a one-man army against crime and corruption. Since his first appearance, he has worn a black outfit with his iconic skull emblem. While he first started wearing a kind of superhero suit in Amazing Spider-Man, his look later changed to being more relaxed, just a simple black shirt with a white skull across the front. Now, as the Punisher, Frank started to dedicate his time to fighting crime in New York City. Throughout the many stories featuring the Punisher throughout the years, the hero has fought evil mobsters like Kingpin and supervillains like Bullseye. And of course, one of the main enemies of the Punisher is Jigsaw. In Marvel Comics, Billy Russo was not Frank Castle's friend in the army like in the Netflix series. Before becoming disfigured and adopting the Jigsaw alias, Russo worked for the New York Mafia behind the assassination of Frank's family, as shown in Punisher Year 1, Number 4. He became Jigsaw after the Punisher threw him through a glass window, causing a permanent disfigurement to his handsome face. But Frank Castle did not just cross paths with villains. As we've mentioned, the Punisher's first story shows how he meets Spider-Man. After that, he worked alongside Spider-Man many times, but he has also been connected to several other New York City characters. For example, he crossed paths with She-Hulk and Luke Cage in 1998, who were both members of the Heroes for Hire team in Heroes for Hire Volume 1, Number 9. In that story, the mercenaries are hired for conflicting missions involving the Punisher. Other characters he crossed paths include Ghost Rider, Black Widow, and Moon Knight, who all fought together against Baron Zemo in the 2019 Punisher Volume 12, Number 14. At one point in Thunderbolts Volume 2, he was also recruited by Thaddeus Ross, the Red Hulk, to be a part of his new Thunderbolts team alongside Elektra, Deadpool, and Agent Venom. However, his tenure on the team did not last long, but the most iconic crossover involving Punisher is with Daredevil. They have had a long history together in Marvel Comics since their first encounter in 1982, with the story in Daredevil number 183 and number 184. They are perhaps Marvel's greatest frenemies. They have a somewhat friendly rivalry because both are good people deep down, but have also battled each other many times. Unlike Punisher's brief feud with Spider-Man, his problem with Daredevil is not a misunderstanding. They strongly disagree on how to handle crime. Daredevil has a strict no-killing policy, which is the opposite of the Punisher's approach. They do have a lot of respect for one another, and both fight the same criminals on several occasions. However, their differences always become an issue again. If they find themselves working together, it soon turns into rivalry again, because Frank is an assassin. In one of their most recent crossovers, they teamed up against a group of criminals, only for the Punisher to kill everyone and Daredevil to call him a murdering piece of filth. In Punisher Volume 12, Number 3, 2018. By the King of Killers arc, Frank Castle's latest story, the Punisher has become the greatest assassin in the world, but he only achieved the status of King of Killers because he has extensive training and a natural talent for fighting. He is an expert in multiple forms of armed and unarmed combat, including martial arts like Muay Thai and Krav Maga. He has no super soldier serum or anything that gives him powers, but Frank reached the peak of human physical condition. Yet many times, the Punisher doesn't even need to fight. He's an unmatched elite sniper, someone who has no problem shooting targets from long distances or in movement, and hardly ever misses. He has an ever-changing arsenal of various automatic and semi-automatic rifles, handguns, explosives, and combat knives. He also has access to military gear such as bulletproof vests when needed. But Frank has such sharp reflexes and moves so quickly, he is a hard target to hit and rarely wears a vest. And although he has a variety of modern military equipment at his disposal, he is also highly adaptable and can make the most of whatever situations he is in. Fun fact, when the Punisher was still depicted wearing a superhero costume, each tooth of the skull on his suit was actually a spare magazine for one of his firearms. Back to his abilities, the Punisher is great at interrogation, using creative means of torture to extract information, as seen in Punisher, Warzone Number 1, 1992. Frank has an incredibly high tolerance for pain, and his body can endure the maximum within human capability. He took hits from Captain America and remained mostly unharmed, for example, when Steve Rogers tried recruiting the Punisher during the Civil War event, and things got out of control. He can fly both helicopters and airplanes, but what's even more impressive than all of that is how strong his willpower is. We all know he is angry and vengeful, always doing things his own way, but he is in fact so headstrong that his mind is impenetrable to external influence. When Letha tried controlling the Punisher's mind in Punisher Volume 8, Number 6, he didn't feel a thing. Now that you know all of his natural abilities, let's explore Frank's latest story, in which he acquires a few new ones that are extremely dark. And that's not the only secret hidden in this series. Before Joe Garrison became the new Punisher in 2024's 14th volume of the Punisher series, Volume 13 took readers on a journey through Frank Castle's mysterious and violent past, revealing a lot of new information. The series essentially reimagines the dark psychological scars behind the Punisher. As a child, Frank was already prone to extreme violence. For example, he was only 10 years old when he committed his first murder, killing a mafia member by setting him on fire with homemade napalm because he had brutally killed an innocent couple. He soon killed again. In high school, his friend Stedman Sternberger was constantly bullied. Stedman helped Frank find the courage to talk to his future wife, Maria, when they were still in school. When Stedman was left behind by the driver and other passengers following a car accident and slowly bled to death, Frank tracked down all the people involved and killed them to avenge his friend. His violent personality eventually attracted the attention of the Hand, setting the stage for future conflicts. By making Frank become involved with the evil Ninja Clan, the series seriously retconned his past, turning the Punisher into a more morally ambiguous figure than ever. The Hand offers him something he could never achieve on his own. They resurrect his wife. However, she is missing her memories and remains distant from Frank, much to his despair. Despite his hatred for the Hand's methods, Frank accepts their leadership, believing he can use their resources to wage an even greater war on crime. Punisher Volume 13 also explained how the Punisher got into a war with Daredevil. Daredevil immediately sees the danger in Frank working with the Hand. Matt Murdock has fought the Hand for years and cannot allow the Punisher to help make them even stronger. However, Frank believes he is in control and that he is using the Hand for his own ends. This is when Frank gets superpowers for the first time, 5 decades since his debut in comics, and pretty dark ones to match with his personality. The Hand grants Frank supernatural abilities through their worshipping of a dark deity known as the Beast. He is named their new High Slayer and acquires superhuman levels of speed, reflexes, and strength, becoming able to tear someone in half with his bare hands. Frank also gets a healing factor and the power to create red energy blasts from his hands, fueled by the Beast's dark magic. All these powers are combined with the Eye of the Beast, which makes him see others for the sins they've committed. However, the Beast subtly manipulates him, feeding his rage and thirst for violence. He becomes more brutal and unhinged, further driving Maria away. Despite Frank's belief that he could control the Hand, they ultimately betray him. He's defeated by Daredevil and goes on the run, disappearing completely. That was the last time Frank Castle was seen in Marvel Comics, although we're sure he'll return at some point. Portrayed by Jon Bernthal in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Frank Castle made his debut in the franchise in the second season of Daredevil. This version of the Punisher was highly praised by fans and critics for being the most faithful to the source material, and so being the darkest, most violent adaptation to date. A highly skilled Marine Force recon sniper with multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, Frank struggled with PTSD when returning home. One day, his family was brutally murdered in a staged gang shootout, which he later learns was orchestrated by CIA agent William Rawlins. Instead of a sad coincidence, his family's death in the show is tied to a deeper conspiracy involving his time in the military and CIA Black Ops. Frank was part of an elite covert unit known as Operation Cerberus, which carried out assassinations and illegal missions under the direction of the CIA. His exceptional combat skills and efficiency made him one of the most important operatives, but he was unknowingly serving corrupt officials. The heroin trade connected to these missions ultimately led to the death of his family, orchestrated as a cover-up to silence him. Searching for answers, Frank obtains a hard drive full of classified CIA intel, setting up the events of his own solo series. The Punisher premiered on Netflix in 2017 and ran for 2 seasons. While some movie versions of the Punisher downplay his military background, this series makes it central to his character. Unlike previous iterations that often portrayed Frank solely as a vigilante, seeking revenge at all costs, the Netflix series deeply explores his traumas. The hallucinations of his family and overall difficulty reintegrating into civilian life make him one of the most interesting characters in the MCU. The show introduces characters who have no comic book counterpart to illustrate the Punisher's ambiguous relationship with law enforcement. While many view him as a dangerous criminal, others recognize that his methods, however brutal, often achieve what the system cannot. Homeland Security agent Dinah Madani, in particular, has a morally conflicted relationship with Frank, oscillating between trying to bring him to justice and letting him do his thing. Another notable difference is the connections Frank has with Micro and Billy Russo. After eliminating those responsible for his family's deaths, Frank retires from being the Punisher and lives under the alias Pete Castiglione, working in construction in New York. He is drawn back into action when David Micro Lieberman, portrayed by Ebon Moss-Bachrach, contacts him with proof of others' involvement in the murder of his family. Instead of being a friend turned enemy, the series version of Microchip is a potential enemy turned reluctant ally. Meanwhile, also unlike the comics, Billy Russo is Frank's former best friend from the military, and the man who fronts the suspicious private military company Anvil. Russo secretly worked for Rawlins and betrayed Frank, allowing his family to be murdered. After Frank learns the truth, he kills Rawlins but spares Russo. Frank does, however, smash Russo's face into a mirror, turning him into Jigsaw. Russo suffers from severe brain damage after the attack, leading to a distorted sense of self. This version of Jigsaw differs a lot from his comic counterpart, with The Punisher Season 2 exploring his descent into madness and his growing unhealthy obsession with Frank. Season 2 sees Frank reluctantly drawn into a new war, this time protecting a teenage girl named Amy Bendix from a powerful conspiracy involving a fundamentalist cult led by John Pilgrim. The season's arc highlights the protective, fatherly instincts within Frank and the family man he once was. Amy serves as an emotional anchor, reminding him of the humanity Frank still has in him. Jon Bernthal's Punisher is set to return in the upcoming Daredevil, Born Again in 2025. The Netflix version is tied to Daredevil but largely avoids other connections to the broader MCU. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Defenders, and The Punisher are all series considered soft canon, which means they are canon events of the main timeline, but do not represent the same importance as true canon, like the Avengers movies, for example. However, with the Punisher being one of the few Netflix-era characters to transition into the new MCU, Bernthal's return suggests that at least some elements of Netflix's The Punisher will remain part of the MCU canon moving forward. Well, for now, all we know is that fans love Jon Bernthal as Frank Castle, and we all can't wait to see him taking on the role again in Daredevil Born Again, which premiered on Disney Plus on March 4th, 2025. What are some of your favorite Punisher moments in comics or on screen? Let us know why you love the Punisher in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching CBR.